Reflexes are one of the main functions of the spinal cord, and they can be defined as rapid, predictable, and involuntary responses that will be in the interest of maintaining our body's homeostasis. If you are anything like me, every time I attempt to cook something or take something out of the oven, I always find a way to burn myself. When we think about this type of situation, we will notice that reflexes will actually play a big role to protect us and pull the body away from potential harm. When you touch a hot pan or step on something sharp, your body reacts on its own and pulls away from those stimuli. We have many different types of reflexes, and we're going to talk about some of the specific reflexes that we have in just a few slides. But before we go into individual reflexes, we first need to understand the concepts of what a reflex arc is. There are two types of reflex arcs: somatic reflex arcs and autonomic reflex arcs. As the autonomic nervous system controls our smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and our glands, autonomic reflex arcs will provide a response using one of these constituents. But somatic reflex arcs refer to our somatic nervous system using our skeletal muscles to respond to certain stimuli. Now, while we have both somatic reflex arcs and autonomic reflex arcs, the components of any reflex arc are going to be the same. Each reflex arc has 5 components, including receptors for a particular stimulus, a sensory neuron that will read that stimuli and direct it to an integration center of some sort. This integration center will analyze the stimuli and direct a response through a motor neuron, which will take that signal out to some type of effector organ. Using the example that I just mentioned, whenever we touch a hot pan on the stove, there are thermoreceptors that are found in the skin that are sensing for extreme stimuli. When they sense the temperature going drastically up, they're going to send signals through sensory neurons into the integration center, which in this example would be the brain. The brain will then recognize this stimuli as potentially tissue damaging, and it's going to send motor signals out to our skeletal muscles to pull our arm away from the pan. All reflex arcs will share the same components, and now that we've seen these components, we can move into some of the specific reflexes that our bodies display. So first and foremost, we have a couple stretch reflexes. Stretch reflexes are important to prevent the overstretching of our muscle fibers. In the event our muscle fibers are stretched too much, that can cause damage to our muscle cells. So it's very important that these reflexes are highly functional in the human body. The two stretch reflexes that we have are the patellar reflex and the Achilles reflex. Using a reflex hammer, which you've likely had done to you when you go to the doctor's office, the doctor will tap on your patellar tendon, just below the patella itself. The expected result is that your lower leg will actually kick outward, and this is a normal response to the stretching of the patellar tendon. The Achilles reflex is the exact same idea as the patellar reflex, however this just senses the stretch of the Achilles tendon instead of the patellar tendon. Spinal nerve branches from L2, L3, and L4 are what are assessed when checking for the patellar reflex, and spinal nerve pairs for S1 and S2 will be what are assessed when checking the Achilles reflex. The next reflex that we're going to discuss is what's known as a superficial cord reflex. This is a reflex that is caused by the stimulation of receptors that can be found in the skin. Our example of this is the plantar reflex, which is also referred to as the Babinski reflex. To check for this reflex, using the handle of the reflex hammer, you will stroke the plantar side of the foot from the heel to the toes. As long as there is no damage to our spinal nerves supplying the plantar region of the foot, the normal response is to see the toes curl. But in the event that there is some damage to the pyramidal tract, instead you'll get the toes flaring outwards in the opposite direction as we saw normally. This is called the Babinski sign. Interestingly enough, the Babinski sign is actually normal in infants because they lack the myelination for the nerves that contribute to the pyramidal tract. At around 18 months, this infant should start showing the normal signs for this reflex. Our last set of reflexes are the pupillary reflexes. These reflexes are characterized by the constriction of the pupil in the eye when a very bright light is shown. In order to check this reflex, all you'll need is a dark room and some type of light source. In order to facilitate the pupillary reflex, the physician will shine a light in one eye and then shine a light in the other eye, observing the responses of each eye after the light has been shown. Under the pupillary reflexes, we have the pupillary light reflex and the consensual reflex. Normally, when a bright light is shown into the eye, the pupil is going to constrict to prevent excessive light from entering into the eyeball. This is a normal response that should be observed when showing the light into the eye of the patient. The consensual reflex, on the other hand, will be seen in the eye that is not shown the light source. This is an ipsilateral reflex because ipsilateral means on the same side of the body, and the consensual reflex is a contralateral reflex because this reflex is happening on the opposite side of the body that is stimulated. In the event that either of these reflexes are absent, this can indicate very severe trauma or perhaps the damage of vital brain tissue. You can also rank the strength of these reflexes, which will also give you some insight about the health of the patient. We can consider the magnitude of what a normal response would be and use this to determine if the patient's response is hypoactive or weak or hyperactive and strong. Each of these reflexes will offer us some type of protection in some way, and all are carried out by the reflex arcs that are housed within the spinal cord. So on that note, I will congratulate you as you have made it to the end of the Anatomy and Physiology 1 lab class. If you have any questions about this material or are struggling in the class, please do not hesitate to reach out to me for assistance. I am always here to help if you need me. I've sincerely enjoyed having each and every one of you in my class this semester, and I wish you very, very good luck as you go on to Anatomy and Physiology 2. Thank you all very, very much for your attention.